When it comes to the Droid line, I've never been a huge fan, but this is surely my most favorite Droid branded device ever, and it's not because of a lack of a Verizon stamp, it's more than that. This is the phone the Moto X 2014 wishes it could be. So enough of us talking, let's dive into the full review of the best Droid device ever made, the Droid Turbo. Now, I usually like to kick off my reviews talking about the design before I dive into the major hardware. Let's clear something out first. This is not meant to be a pretty phone like the Moto X is. It was built for function before form, and honestly, that doesn't faze me at all. It's somewhat large in the hand, it doesn't have an all too massive display, only at 5.2 inches, but it's completely sufficient, and we'll talk why the display is so special a little later on. Now, it is a rather chunky device at 8.3mm, but that thickness is rated for the Kevlar edition, which is a great look, but does have that Verizon stamp. If you vouch to buy the special edition 64GB ballistic nylon edition, the thickness will grow to a massive 11.2mm, but you do get rid of the Verizon stamp. That's an even trade, right? It definitely has one of the most interesting textures around as well. It's right on par with that 1+1 Sandstone Black edition, but this one just looks a lot more cool. The only downside is this nylon makes a lot of weird cracking noises, and I mean a lot of noises. Now let's talk about some specs, and this is the real reason why you'd want this phone. First things first is the display. It may be the same size as the Moto X 2014, but it packs a whole lot more pixels. It has a 2560 by 1440 resolution that is so tightly packed in at 565 pixels per square inch. That is an absolute crazy number. It's probably one of the sharpest displays around. The only phone beating it in PPI that I know of is the LTEA edition of the Galaxy S5 with a 5.1-inch Quad HD display. Plus, the screen is Super AMOLED, which means it's incredibly vibrant. Now, there is a slight color shift similar to the one found on the Moto X and Nexus 6, but this is only experienceable at very extreme angles. But the color temperature and fine-tuning seems to be fairly similar between the three devices, and quite frankly, it's all good. Now, watching videos, browsing through rich content, and even going through your home screens look really good on this beautiful display. Plus, that extra single front-facing speaker does help out when you're watching videos. On the inside, the story gets even better. A 2.7 GHz quad-core Snapdragon 805 chip with 3 GB of RAM, the Adreno 420 GPU, and that ballistic nylon edition gives you 64 GB of built-in flash memory. It's also available in 32 GB for the other models. On the backside, we're taking a look at a 21 megapixel camera without any type of OIS, but it does have dual LEDs and the ability to record 4K UHD video, but strangely only at 24 FPS. And to run the entire show, we are looking at one of the largest batteries in all of mobile technology, a 3,900 mAh battery. That is a huge capacity, and this seriously gets the device up and running for over a day and a half with moderate to extreme usage. Now let's dive into the software side. With past droids, they've always were filled with droid things, and tons of them were considered bloatware in most people's books. This year, Motorola and Verizon have done things a lot differently, and perhaps Verizon is finally seeing the light at the end of a tunnel. This is running an almost stock form of Android, in this case Android 4.4.4 KitKat, with the subtle additions of Moto Voice and Actions. Or to put it in a short way, it basically runs the same software found on the Moto X and Moto G. The beauty of this is it makes this device lightning fast. The amount of bloatware here is minimal, and thankfully almost all of it can be disabled or uninstalled. So your experience is basically stock Android. And this also means your updates will come a lot quicker than droids of the past. Now, going through the menus, you really can't even tell that it's a droid. The only giveaway is the startup boot animation with this cool droid animation, but this is kind of slightly entertaining if you're about 5 years old. But all the Android functions seem to operate exactly similar to stock Android KitKat. Add that software with incredible hardware and you get really outstanding performance. Simple tasks like browsing the web, playing video games, multitasking, and watching 1440p video through YouTube is dealt with without a sweat. The Turbo performs pretty darn well through a day-to-day basis, and I've really not found anything that could stress this phone out. I mean, it is packed with the best specs available at this time. And honestly, I've really loved using this phone with all that power and battery capacity in a smaller size than say the Nexus 6 with basically equal specs. It's actually nice picking up a smaller phone that will perform just as good or even better in the case of battery life than the bigger phones. Also, it's worth a mention to say this is packed with the same software found on the Moto X, including Moto Actions, Voice, and the ambient display. All the features that I loved on the Moto X, so you're really not sacrificing anything. Next up is the 21 megapixel camera on the Droid Turbo. Now, it's not packed active OIS or any neat tricks, it's just a large megapixel count camera with 2 LED flashes, and like the usual, it's not exactly the best. Photos do have a lot of great detail and good composure, it's just not the greatest in terms of dynamic range, or really any type of good thing in terms of photo. It takes relatively good photos, just not the best. But you do get 4K UHD video, but as I said, it does only record at 24 frames per second. It's great if you want to shoot movies, but you're really not going to be shooting it on a DROID Turbo. Now last but not least is the battery life on the Turbo. Isn't it safe to say that a 3,900 mAh battery lasts a heck of a long time? Well, the DROID Turbo on average got me around 7 to 8 hours of on-screen time with extreme, and I do mean extreme usage. I'm talking about using this in a mobile hotspot, browsing the web, YouTube videos non-stop, Netflix, every single thing I can imagine, and I still got this phone through an entire day. Now, if I dial back my usage to maybe moderate, I could probably use this phone for 2 days straight, but I definitely chickened out just in case my phone died. Now, if you were even slightly worried about the battery life of the Turbo, I really wouldn't be, and if you include a turbocharger, this thing will give you a substantial charge in just mere minutes. So the DROID Turbo, it's literally one of the best Android phones around. It has a beautiful display, amazing hardware, and it runs a near stock form of Android with features like Moto Voice and Moto Actions. So what's the problem then? Well, it is a Verizon only exclusive, which kinda sucks, but rumors of a GSM variant do excite me. But if you do happen to be on the big red network and you want something like the Moto X but desire the specs of the Nexus 6, well, you know what? The DROID Turbo is exactly what you're looking for. This is one amazing phone. I just wish it was more readily available for different networks. So make sure to leave me some comments below. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe and like button. And as always, my name is Marco Hanna, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.